Last week, I competed in the UKIE Student Game Jam for 2026 along with 3 other teammates. This jam ran for 32 hours and the theme of the jam was symmetry. We spent the first hour or so simply talking about the word symmetry and trying to come up with ideas for ways to implement this into a game in an interesting way. Then, at some point, we decided to look up the origin of the word and found that it comes from the ancient Greek word symmetria, which was more about equal dimensions and proportions than strict visual reflections. After hearing the term equal proportions, there was one thing that popped into everyone's mind: that German TV show about cutting objects perfectly in half so that both sides weigh the exact same. So that's what we decided to make our game about. The first thing I worked on was the cutting mechanic, as this is the most important part of the game. I had no idea how to accomplish this in Godot, so I just typed it into Google and found this Reddit post which gave me exactly what I was looking for. I pasted the code into my game, gave it a test, and it worked pretty well. I just had to change some stuff so that it cut the image straight down the middle rather than diagonally. I then wrote some code to make the image slowly move across the screen as if they were on a conveyor belt, and that was basically the core gameplay completed. Or so I thought. One of our artists drew this lovely fish, and I thought it would be as easy as swapping the default Godot image with the new fish drawing. So I did that, tested the game, and yeah, something is definitely wrong here. I spent some time trying to figure out why this was happening, and ended up highlighting a problem with just copying and pasting code from Reddit without actually reading or understanding it. The way the cutting code works is it generates a bunch of points around your image and uses that to convert it into a shape which can be cut in half. When you do this with a square image, it makes the resulting shape pretty simple. When you put in a complex image with a transparent background, the resulting shape is much more complex, and I think this is what caused the cut to look bad. I then spent some more time trying to figure out ways to fix this or ways to work around it, but then I realised I was overcomplicating things. If the cutting worked fine with a rectangular shape, but not with a complex shape, I could just stop it from automatically calculating the points, and instead I could just manually create the shape as a rectangle. I gave this a go and it worked perfectly. Okay, so now the core gameplay was all done. From this point on, it was a case of adding polish and juice. I first created an animation that made the fish fall off the conveyor belt if you cut it too early. Then I added some simple UI elements to show off your score and lives. When you cut a fish well, your score increases. However, if you cut the fish bad, cut the fish too early or late, or don't cut it at all, you lose a life. I also animated the life icon to go red, shake, and fall off the screen. I did this part all in code using tweens instead of using the animation player for some reason. I'm pretty new to using tweens, so there's probably a more elegant way of doing this, but it works, and that's the most important thing. Next, I created and animated some text that tells you how far through the fish you cut it, as well as a score of good, okay, or bad. However, I noticed that when I asked people to play test the game, they got confused with the score text, as it looks like it's telling them that their cut was 49% good or 95% bad, which doesn't really make sense. I then got a suggestion to show the percentage sizes of both sides of the fish after the cut, which makes it more obvious what the text is actually trying to convey. I also created this particle effect which happens when you cut a fish. It's made using a simple star texture I drew and a GPU particle node with a high level of explosiveness. I also learned that you can use a color ramp to change the opacity of the particles over time, which makes them fade out at the end rather than just abruptly disappearing. While I was doing this, the other developer on my team created this main menu, which has some buttons and some fun waving text. We found out doing text like this is actually pretty simple. There's a built-in rich text label node that lets you write something called BB code directly into the text box, allowing you to do fun effects like a wave, a pulse, or even rainbow text. At this point, the gameplay was pretty much all finished. I just had to start importing the assets that the artist had been drawing. Here are some time lapses of their work. They drew a background for the factory, these icons for the player's health, the cat who you play as, a bunch of different fish variations, and this really sad game over screen that shows the cat being fired from his job. I think the art turned out really good and it fits really well into the game, and it is way better than anything I could have done. One thing I realised at this point is that the conveyor belt wasn't actually moving in the game, which doesn't make sense. I first thought of writing some code that spawns in these PNGs of the conveyor belt and moves them along the screen, but then I realised there was a much simpler solution: shaders. I've barely ever used shaders in the past, but I think a simple scrolling texture is well within my abilities, with the help of Google, of course. This is the initial code, which uses time to move the x-axis of the texture. This works fine, but whenever I updated the scroll speed through the game's code as the game got faster, it kept on making the texture jump back to the beginning. I think this is because updating a variable in the shader causes it to reset the time or something, I don't really know. But I found a suggestion online that said to instead increment a variable through the regular script and then pass that into the shader. This could be terrible for performance, I don't know, but I didn't have enough time left in the jam to spend any longer on this. I don't know if it actually worked because the texture still jumps sometimes, but oh well, I'm sure no one will notice. At this point we were approaching the end of the game jam, but I still had time to add one more feature, so I thought I'd try and score some extra points with the judges by adding an online leaderboard. I went on Google looking for existing services I could use for this, and I saw one called Simple Boards, which have a free tier that lets you have one leaderboard, and that's all I needed. I installed the plugin and then looked through the code in the various scripts that come with the plugin. I also read the Getting Started guide on the website and found it to be pretty simple to follow. One thing that confused me a bit is when you send an entry to the leaderboard, there's this parameter which is just called metadata, but it turns out that actually needs to be the name of the leaderboard that you set on the website when you created it. This wasn't overly clear, but once I figured that out, everything else went pretty smoothly. When the player starts the game, it asks for their name, and when they lose, it sends their name and score to the online leaderboard. Then when you press the leaderboard button on the main menu, it populates the leaderboard with the top 10 players' names and scores. As you can see, we've had quite a few people play our game, although no one has beaten my high score yet. When I tried testing the leaderboard at my university, however, it didn't work, which I figured out is because the uni network was blocking the website. To make sure no one else would run into this issue, I added some text that explains that the leaderboard can't be reached, and then after a few seconds it falls back to a local leaderboard that resets when the game is closed. Hopefully the judges won't be on a network that blocks the site, but I thought it's better to be safe than sorry. Once that was all done, all I had to do was find some free sound effects and music online, and then the game was pretty much complete. Here's a short clip of the final gameplay. Even I can't beat my own high score. If you want to have a go at playing the game, I put a link in the description. Anyway, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed.